Ex-prisoners of Reddit, what was the worst thing you saw inside the prison walls? Not exactly terrible, in fact it might actually have been the best thing I saw while in prison. This was in Oregon, by the way, reputable for being some of the least hard yards in the country. Still saw plenty of, but this is the only one I like to talk about. Coming back from chow, you walk down this super long, football field length, 30 wide hall to get back to your cell block. Walking back, I've got my eye on two elderly lifers, both with canes, having a pretty animated discussion over who knows what at the end of the hall. As I continue walking towards them, apparently one of them says something the other doesn't like because he picks up that cane and just beams the other dude on the head. I think here we go, lock down and expect the other old timer to go down, but nope, homie must be made of sterner stuff because he picks up his cane and boom, full on geriatric sword fight in the middle of mainline a la Cliffside Inigo Montoya fight scene in The Princess Bride. Like, these dudes are really going at it, clack, occasionally getting each other, couple of pretty gnarly lumps and gashes on each other's heads, and they're just going back and forth all over the hall, both of them 80 years old plus, doing it Dark Ages style. Was wild. Eventually the guards managed to sprint down the hall, huffin' and puffin', and hose the two of them down with OC spray and drag them off to seg, but I'll never forget my first old man stick fight. Fun fact, one of the dudes was a cannibal who killed and ate 3 people. The other was a pedophile who couldn't walk the yard or he'd get killed on sight. Honestly, not much. If someone has bad charges, basically sex crimes of any kind, everyone knows, and shuns them if not actually trying to hurt/kill them. But as for violent crimes, unless they are against kids, no one really cares. Cannibalism is so specific, and there were so few at my yard that I couldn't tell you for sure, having had no interactions around them. Bonus fun fact, Kip Kinkle was at my yard. Super chill guy, is now basically a Buddhist guru, and teaches a yoga class. Would never have guessed he killed his parents and shot up a school. I watched a guy come into federal prison camp, had a year and a day. They gave him a job driving a mower to mow grass. On his first day of mowing, he ran the mower off the edge of the pond, mower flipped, the roll bar wasn't installed, they landed in about a foot of water, the back of the mower seat ended up on his neck, mower on top of him, and he drowned. The one co at the camp wouldn't let us help but couldn't lift it. He called for help but they had to come from the max across the street, and it was like 10 to 15 minutes. Finally we as inmates set it and ran to the water. It took 6 guys to lift the mower off his neck. The co and another inmate drug him out of the water. By then the max prison co/medical had made it over. The started CPR, already dead. They carried him on board, slid him in the back of pickup truck bed, drove him to the front. Life flight landed, took him away. Official report says he died on the way to the hospital in the helicopter, and his family believes that. I was one of the first to see to him. I was the one that went screaming to get inmates to come help. That man was dead when he came out of the water. I saw it in first person. The prison lied, covered it up because they didn't want to be sued. He was legally blind, remember that. They let him on a mower. Our commissary sheets was 1 page front and back, his was 3 pages so that he could see it. After it was over, a day or 2 later, the camp director came and talked to the whole camp, saying he died on the way to hospital, that they tried to save him. Okay, whatever. Then a few hours goes by and the POS company is waking around talking to the shift change CO and says they give him CPR because no one can die on prison property at a camp to our negligence, so we had to give him CPR to keep him alive till they got him off the property. He was dead, way dead, coming out of the water. Not the most messed up, but this stuck with me for whatever reason. While studying medicine, I was working at a prison clinic in NY. Guy comes in with a fairly dirty cast on his arm, otherwise he seems fairly normal. He's there to have his cast removed, so I ask him when they put the cast on. He says December. It's late January, so yeah, it's been enough time for the bone to heal. I figured his living conditions were the reason for the cast looking like that, so I got the okay and started removing the cast. The smell. His skin underneath looked terrible, and there were little pieces of wood and other crap embedded in the skin. Complete atrophy of the casted forearm. After further questioning, it turns out the cast had been on his arm for over a year, and it was just getting removed. I was glad to be getting out of that rotation. Spent 5 years in Stock. Honestly, the worst part of the whole bid was county jail while I waited for the plea process to work out before being sent to state prison. I spent about 6 months in Camden County. I was unfortunately placed in maximum security because the nature of my crime, first-degree armed robbery. At the time I was a 140-pound white kid from the suburbs, and Camden was experiencing a massive shortage of space in the jail. Not a great combination for me. Slept on a mat on the ground near the toilet in a cell with 3 other guys. Cell had 1 bunk bed, so was designed for 2 occupants. First meal on the tier, a guy was walking down the steps to get his food, and just as he approached the bottom he gets absolutely blindsided under the chin by another inmate wielding his meal tray as a weapon. The walloped guy goes to the ground and the assailant proceeds to stab him in every possible place with what looked like a pen. I'd later learned that many of the tier's stabbing tools had pen handles. It turns out the victim was a crip, but the whole jail was pretty much run by bloods. Apparently he was supposed to check in, opt for protective custody, upon coming to county, but I guess he didn't want to. So they essentially forced the issue. The altercation didn't last long. Guards called a code, alarm went off, we all locked in our cells, and the officers then rolled into the tier about 10 deep and, based on the sounds, couldn't see the action after lockdown, pummeled the stabber. A month later I was moved to a smaller tier which was reserved for inmates facing larger sentences. I was indicted on 3 counts of first-degree armed robbery as well as 9 different other peripheral crimes. It was much quieter and the COs treated us much better. I was told this was because a lot of the guys on this tier had nothing to lose, and when things got bad on this tier, they never did in the 6-ish months I was there, it generally went straight to nightmare mode. I saw some other objectionably worse stuff while in state prison, but I guess I was desensitized at that point because when I think back the first thing I see is the guy getting decked with a hard plastic food tray. Was in the TV room during late night in a dorm unit pretty early on in my 10-year bid. There were only a few guys in there since it was about to close, and I was towards the back of the room. A guy walked in with a coffee cup, sets it down at a chair a couple rows in front of me, then leaves the room again. There was an older white guy sitting in the seat directly in front of the coffee chair. Couple minutes later, the man who left the coffee comes back in through the back door of the TV room, walks right past me with a huge piece of metal. It looks like a giant tin can top. He walked right to the chair behind the older white guy and brought the metal around to the front of his neck and started sawing this dude's head off a few feet away from me. I was stunned and watched for a while, but I eventually got up and walked out the back door, being careful not to make furtive movements to tip off the CO at the desk. The next morning, I learned that the older guy was a child molester and had been nearly decapitated. The giant piece of metal was the entire top of a toilet/sink console that had been removed, flattened, and sharpened. Was definitely among the craziest incidents of violence I saw in there.